Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda pending any changes. No changes? Anybody make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Wolk,
Second.
second by Mr. Shepherd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good news, recognitions, and announcements.
Yes, we have our good news this month. As you know, it's July, so we don't have any students on campus. So Mr. Pope put together the good news and recognition, so it's just in word form tonight. So I'll just go over it quickly. The first one, I know you were aware, but we had the Safety Summit on July 18th. It was a great time. All of us came together, law enforcement, mental health agencies, school officials, administrators, counselors. We all came together. There was over 100, I think about 115 or so came, and we hosted in the PAC, and we heard from speakers, and it was just a great time of networking, talking about things, especially in light of the tragedies that we've had with school shootings and things like that. It was a really good time for all of us to share resources. One of the biggest things that came from the event was over the years, there's 11 county school districts, and that's kind of unique for a county to have so many school districts in one area. And so over the years, even prior to COVID, we had talked about having some type of universal referral system with agencies and everything, and it just never really got going. And thanks to Clint Johnson at R7 and Steve Horn and then Jacqueline at the health department, they continued to work on that, and then bringing the rest of us on board to have this universal referral system so to get services matched up with students at a faster rate rather than jumping through so many hoops. So very excited about it. I think it has the potential to really put some services directly in the hands of our students and with their families. So it was very well received. We had President Window was there, and lots of law enforcement actually were there, first responders. So it was good, a really good day. The next is, you'll see the elementary students. They earned perfect attendance and good behavior awards. They got to select a prize. You can see all their prizes there. And then lastly, just thank you to the city of Festus. We are continuing to just build that positive partnership with the city. I think, the school and the city working together is so important. And the city recognized and gave proclamation to several of our student athletes back in their June 27th meeting. They did a proclamation to our third place finish for our state boys track team. They did the baseball second place finish at the state tournament, and then they gave an individual recognition to Jacob Meyer for his 4 state titles. He really did a tremendous job. And as you all know, we've talked about him before. He's headed to Wichita State, and I tease all the time as I'm going over to West City to walk, he's always running, and I'm like, does he even own a car? I'm not sure. I think he just runs everywhere he goes. So he's a great kid, and I'm anxious to see his success as he continues in Wichita State. So that's it.
Thank you. And I would like to say I'm really glad that we were able to host that safety summit. That was a lot of really good information, especially in this day and time. It's something that's on the forefront of everybody's mind, and it's nice to try to get everybody on the same page of how you're going to respond in that situation.
It was, and even afterwards, after the presentations and everybody, the formal meeting, we had lunch. They provided Chick-fil-A. It was kind of grab and go, but we had tables set up, and people were able to stick around, eat their lunch, and network, and just talk more about the services that each agency provides. So I think it was very well received, and I think the conversations will continue for the benefit of not just Festus students, but our county students. So it was very good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
This time I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Fadler, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Martin? Okay. Dr. Roos, any notable things to?
In the consent agenda there's, I've made some notes, a few of the things, science lab, we kind of joked, Mr. Wright retired, so some of those things he would not let go of, and so now that he's gone, they said it's time to get rid of those things, and so, literally, there were some things that were ancient that had to be thrown away. So that's what you see in the surplus items there, it's just they were able to clean out the science labs. The Hall of Fame, you can see that nomination there. It is not final until you approve it tonight. And as far as the bylaws go, I am going to let Mr. Pope speak on that. They changed some of the bylaws at the last meeting, and I was in attendance at that meeting, but I wasn't in the prior meeting, so I don't know how it all came to be. So Mr. Pope, would you mind to speak about that and the Distinguished Employee Award?
So the first part of the change in the bylaws is a change in the voting procedure. We've had a few instances where we only have a small number of nominees for the Hall of Fame. And so the bylaws call for a whittling of the nominees from whatever number are there to 3. In the past couple of years, we've only had 4 or 5 nominees. So it's a bit of a waste of time and energy to whittle it down to 3 and then vote. So we discussed and agreed that we were going to change it to, if you approve, just change the bylaw so that if we have 6 or fewer, then they can just discuss those 6 and vote on those 6. And then if there are more than 6, then we will whittle down to 3. They will whittle down to 3. Also, the bylaws call for 2/3 a majority to be forwarded to the board. There are also, if there are a couple of good, solid nominees, you could split the vote. So rather than just have one vote, if the board, if you agree to change the bylaws, the committee would then, if they don't have 2/3 vote, then they would discuss more and see if they can come to a consensus on one of those nominees to be forwarded to the board for consideration. So we wouldn't necessarily have a year where we don't have a Hall of Fame nominee.
Right.
So that would give us that opportunity. And if after 5 votes, then we can't come to an agreement, then there wouldn't be one that year. That would give 5 opportunities to vote and discuss. So that's one bylaw change. The other is the establishment of a Distinguished Educator Award, which would, I've been here for 4 years, and every year I've been leading the committee. People have discussed wanting to honor and recognize distinguished educators, classified and, or certified and classified staff, who may not be an alumni of the district, so they can't be a member of the Hall, or they can't be nominated and be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but are worthy of recognition. So this would be able to, we would then be able to recognize distinguished educators who have been here for at least 15 years, and they would have to be gone from the district, retired, or gone someplace else for at least a year before they could be considered for a Distinguished Educator Award. It would be, you would have, the nominee would have to just show benefits to students, and not just the classroom, but outside the classroom or outside of school hours, if you were a classified staff as a coach, PTO leader, mentor, tutor, just your community involvement. So that is, and then that person would then be recognized at the annual convocation in August when we come back to school. So that educator would then come in and would be able to be honored in front of basically their colleagues, or people. So those are the 2 bylaw changes.
Right. Sounds good. It was clear.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. The other couple of items there, you see the return to school plan that is required with the ESSER funding, if you remember. We have to now do that every 6 months, and so that plan is posted there for your review and to look at. I have, Ms. Roth and I have talked about it extensively. I also had a meeting with the area county superintendents, and so everyone is in agreement. Our plans are pretty much the same across the county, so I wanted to bring your attention to that. And then we have a couple of clinics, the flu shot clinics on there. And then last month we talked about the additional leave days, and so that is on there as well.
Anybody have any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
Well, I would like to see regarding COVID, I'm gonna, the 4% threshold. I did read the EBB, which was written in 2006, pre-COVID. But I know nobody else agrees with me, that's fine. I want to state that because COVID is a different animal. Could be because I lost my little brother to COVID in February. I'm very sensitive about it.
Yes, I agree. Ms. Roth and we actually talked about that, and if you know, in one of the bullet points, I think it's the last bullet point, it lists that although we aren't going to monitor, on that dashboard, she's monitoring it, and then she reports directly to us, so to me, and then I'll report that to you. So she's still monitoring the percentages.
Right, and okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything?
No, I like that we did the 3 days.
I think that will be very well received.
Yes,
And I appreciate it.
Very well deserved.
yeah, important.
Okay, if no further comments, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, communications and reports, superintendent's report.
I get to do this for the first time.
I know,
I'm so
I know.
excited.
Congratulations.
Yes, I have to tell you, I do have to give kudos to Dr. McInnes and Mr. Earnhardt because they knew how nervous I was today because I've been
It's
in
just us.
in board meetings hundreds of times, but
Yeah.
I've never had to lead the meeting with the president so I was nervous. And so they stayed with me after work today.
After school.
After work today. Mr. Earnhardt got dinner for us and they just worked through with me. So I so appreciate that and I just want to thank them because that was, we are really building a strong team and I love that. So thank you guys very much for that. I know you had families to get home to, so I recognize that you stayed with me on purpose. So.
It's okay, I only stayed because mine are out of town.
I do appreciate it. So there are some things I want to go over with you, one of those being summer school. Last time we met, it was just finishing up, so I wanted to just give you some numbers. We had a successful summer school. We ended up with, it closed on June 28th, and we had 1,254 students. And so I asked Mr. Earnhardt, that calculated into 955.99 ADA. So that definitely is beneficial to us. And we want Dr. Mauser, Mr. Mothersbaugh, and Mr. Partney were our principals during summer school, and again, they did a fantastic job. We did require them to do a summer school evaluation after summer school this year, so Mr. Earnhardt will use those evaluations and asked for strengths and then challenges and what they would like to see for next summer school. So he's going to use that to enhance some of our program for next summer. So I think that was a good addition to our program. Then the back to school information, the community newsletter went out in the Leader. If you didn't see that, we have copies upstairs if you need one. It's also all posted on our website. Open houses are right around the corner, August 16th and 17th across the district. One thing I wanted, in case you get questions on early childhood, we hired Dr. Mauser for this school year to build that program with her committee. So we met with her about a week ago, and she's actually going to have a table at the open house at the elementary. And she's going to have informational cards with a wait list code on that so that we can begin to start gathering numbers of how many kids we're going to need to service. We anticipate that it's around the 200 mark, but we're going to start actually putting some data to that so that we can see how many classrooms and teachers and things we need. So she will be at the elementary open house on that night. Online registration also opened up July 18th, and everyone this year, if you recall, is required to provide proof of residency. So that's new this year. So it's going fairly well. We've had quite a few submissions already. It's doing exactly what we thought it would, which is catch those people who don't live here. And so we're having some individual conversations with each of those. So, and of course that does take time, but again, kudos to Mrs. Cox. If you don't know Paula Cox, she likes to be behind the scenes a lot. But she's managing all of those right now as they come in, and she's actually touching every one of those submissions. And so if they don't have their documentation submitted with it, she's reaching out, and then the principals are following up with investigation. So again, I think it's a good process we have in place, but it is time consuming and tedious, but it'll benefit us overall because it's a K-12 proof of residency that we're requiring. So
do we have any type of percentage, like are there a lot of, I always worry about the kid who's in the upper grade whose parent may be, and then now they have to go somewhere else.
Yep. So you mean total submissions or
Yeah,
total
do we have
numbers?
like, is it a lot?
We have 3 days of online registration that have opened.
Mhm.
We have 268 students with registration completed already, just after
Okay.
3 days, which I think is great.
Yeah. Mhm.
We have 606 that have started but not submitted. Again,
Okay.
that goes, I think, to show that we've had some good communication. People are actually getting on there and starting the registration. We've had 75 of those that did not show proof of residency, which equals about 44 families. So right now, those are the ones that we're reaching back
Right.
out to see what their situations are, because you're right, several of them do have to do with difficult situations, maybe foster care or homeless or things like that.
Yeah.
So Ms.
Okay.
Pellerin is involved in those.
Super.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay.
New teacher orientation is the 8th through the 10th of August. And then the first teacher workday is August 16th, and with the first student day being Monday, the 22nd. This year for convocation, I did want to bring your attention, I am changing it a little bit, and I think it's been well received so far. We're going to have it here at the PAC, since we have the facilities to do so. I don't think, if you recall, we've always gone to the hotel and done the banquet room. But we have the facilities to house everyone and bring everyone together. So we're going to have our breakfast in the high school gym, and we are including everyone, food service, transportation, maintenance, everyone is invited to come. I've talked to all those directors already, and I actually had one of them tear up because she said it was the first time they'd ever been invited. So I'm really thankful for that. Again, I know we've talked about the pay and working on that,
Right.
but as Mr. Earnhardt and Dr. McInnes and I have talked about, you know, it goes a long way of how you treat people too.
Uh-huh.
And so I think just making sure that they are very much appreciated, and that, you know, our doors we wouldn't have students here if it wasn't for them. You know, we need all of them. And so they are invited to the breakfast that morning, and we are getting it catered so that food service can actually participate and be a part of that. So I'm really excited about that, and I think it's going to be very well received. From breakfast, we're moving into the PAC where the actual convocation will take place. And I've told Dr. McInnes and Mr. Earnhardt that they can speak, but I've heard that Mr. Earnhardt really likes the microphone, so I'm going to have to, I told him today, you know how you guys put the timer on when I speak at presentation? So he's going to get up there, I'm going to set the timer and tell him he has limited time. So then a couple of last things here. Vision, I gave you
Boy, I've got a
all.
lot of words.
So I gave you all the Vision 2026, and I know you've seen it before. But as I told you in my interview, when you interviewed me, that I really feel like it's foundational for us to have a strong reason why we do what we do. And so I wanted to put this back in front of you, because every meeting that I've had, and the three of us as a leadership team, as we're building our meeting agendas to meet with people, we always go back to this. Like, if somebody requests something, where does it fit? If we're going to allocate money, where does it fit? And so we're constantly going back to our vision. And so I wanted to make sure you had a copy of that. Eventually, I would like to add those Vision 2026 things into the agenda, so you know, like, when we talk about this is why, because it is a part of this part of the agenda. So I just wanted you to have that on hand. We'll talk more about it later. Preliminary map data did come in. I have shared the preliminary with the principals. Dr. McInnes is in the process of meeting with each of them, talking to them. It is not released yet for the public, but we're pleasantly happy with how it is overall. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but you know that is a huge part of who I am. I love the data. I love to look at it. So Dr. McInnes and I have already talked. He's like, okay, I understand there's definitely a Festus way. And so I'm trying to bring him up right. So he's been sitting in with me on those meetings, and obviously learning and talking to the principals too. So we'll have that presentation for you. Probably not until October. That's usually when we start doing that. And then the board meetings, Mr. Pope and I had spoke. I don't know if you know or not, but Facebook sometimes takes us down for certain things when we're streaming, sometimes for our activities, sometimes in here. So Mr. Pope has moved all of our live streaming to our YouTube. So it's still there, it's still available, but it's all on YouTube as opposed to being on Facebook, because they shut it down. Is that right? Do you have anything you want to add on that?
It's generally for copyright restrictions from our activities when they play music in the venues, so we're just blanket, we're just, we all our streams to YouTube.
It's all released on that.
And it'll be it's on our website as well. Everything is always on our website.
Okay. And then just a reminder about our work session next week on the 28th.
Yep. 6:30.
6:30, yes.
Very good information. Really excited about the back-to-school convocation and having everybody there. I
Yes,
think it's
I think that's awesome.
a great step in the right direction.
absolutely, because every one of those has something to do with our kids.
Next up, budget updates.
That's Mr.
Okay,
Earnhardt.
so in your packet, there's two spreadsheets. The first one is the 2021-22 final ending balances for all of our funds. So this is just an update of the document that I gave you in January. Few minor changes. This did allow us to close our books. So that column, the row in green there at the bottom, those are where we end. Final balance for all of those funds to close out 2021-22. You will see that our reserves is at 31.47%. That is with a $2.6 million transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4. That number is actually down about $5,000 because if you remember, we talked about being able to carry the balance from the previous 5 years and include that in the transfer. And in that original figure, there was $5,000 of transportation money from 2016. And they told us that we had to include 21-22 school year as part of that 5-year. So that's why that number's down by $5,000. But we're still going to be able to transfer $2.6 million, which gets our Fund 4 to 3.5, just because we've talked about all the potential for renovations and things that we're going to have to do with classroom space and things of that nature. The numbers in red or in pink, those are our unrestricted balances. So basically the difference is you see that unrestricted balance that says scholarships. So that $1.2 million, that's the money in our account in Fund 1 that is restricted specifically for scholarships and also activity money. That's the money that clubs fundraise for themselves. Those two types of accounts, the balances roll over each year, that money stays there, and that money is restricted specifically for those two areas. And so that's why you see the difference. The unrestricted reserve is still 27.5%, still a very good percentage. But I wanted to be very transparent about what our balances look like and make sure that I communicated the difference between our unrestricted balance and our overall balance. So we'll start the end of the year with the numbers in green, and that's where our beginning balances for the 22-23 school year are at. Any questions about those?
Nope.
Okay, so then your next spreadsheet is the 22-23 summary. Again, this is an updated version of what I gave you in June. A couple changes. Number one, the beginning balances are different. They're a little higher than what we had anticipated at the end of June. Once we finally closed our books, there's a little more money in each of those accounts than what we anticipated. That also reflects a couple changes in personnel, just people leaving and new people coming in. And then we also received our PAT budget after the June board meeting, and so that reflects some additional revenues from that PAT budget that I wasn't anticipating. And once, that's done by 4 area schools, and so once they completed the budget, there was a little higher amount of revenues than what I anticipated. So again, that's our projections for where we're going to be expenditures and revenues for this year. You'll see a project to be at 30% in reserves at the end of the year.
Very good. It's always better to have more money than what you're expecting.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions about either one of those?
Thank you for the spreadsheet, Mr. Earnhardt. I think it's very,
Yeah.
Very easy to read and understandable.
Yep.
Good. That's what we like.
And then your explanation validates what I thought, so thank you.
That's even better.
I appreciate it.
Okay, prior new business on the facilities reports.
Yes, I have just an update on all of the things. And first of all, I need to buy Mr. Stegeman dinner or something because I have spent a tremendous amount of time with him. As you know, I was very open with you about my desire and need to learn facilities because that was the one area that Dr. Luttrell took care of and did it excellently. So he did not need much assistance in that. So I have spent the last 3 weeks every Friday with Mr. Stegeman. So much so even up on the roofs. I've been on the rooftops of the buildings. And he
Find that hard to believe.
he said, are you sure you want to go on the roof? I'm like, how am I going to know if I don't see it?
That's
So,
right.
Remember the day you tried to walk out on the catwalk at the Performing Arts Center?
you gotta experience it, so, but I
I'm proud of you.
appreciate his patience with me because he actually has, that's taking time away from the jobs he needs to do to try to help me and understand everything. So he's been with me and spent a lot of time with me, and I've been able to see the district from his perspective, which, as I said, I've been in the buildings thousands of times, but when you look at it from somebody else's eyes, it gives you a whole new perspective. And so that's what I've been doing with him over the last few weeks. And so just some updates on the projects that are going on across the district. The IT office, they will be moving. Actually, they started moving today. The restroom is the last little bit of that project that needs to be finished, but that should be finished by August 1st. So that will house Mr. Pope, and it will house Mr. Bauman and Miss Roth, and who am I forgetting?
Ms. Cox.
Miss Cox. Oh, no, Miss Roth is going, Miss Cox
No,
is.
Ms. Cox is right.
Yes. And then elementary classroom and counseling renovation, that's at the elementary, the upper wing, we had to do the abatement there. We were a little nervous because they got behind a little bit, but they've made up some time. So that is all finished. They're actually painting is going on now. And Mr. Stegeman's crew will be doing the flooring, and then they'll wax the floor, and then the furniture can actually be moved in. So Dr. Seifert has already notified and is talking to those teachers because at first we weren't sure that we were going to be done in time. But it looks like we're going to be done, but it's going to be right up to teacher workday. So he's talking to them about, if they want to come in on Saturday, opening the building and things like that. So we are hopeful, and Mr. Stegeman says that he thinks they'll be in there by the teacher workday. So that is the 3rd grade hallway, if you're familiar, and then the counseling center that was redone. Then the high school fax classroom, all of that, the countertops, they're completing the floor and should be waxed and ready to go by August 1st. If you recall, the interior doors in here are being renovated tomorrow and Monday. They're going to do all the interior doors and then clean the carpets, and they're also painting down here in the boardroom this weekend. The storage facility, I'm sure you've seen it going up over there, and so it's progressing. The electric should be restored to the ball field the 2nd week of August, and so that's moving right along. There's no issue there. The signage at the middle school, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the borings are there and they're ready to start the installation. That all should be done by August the 5th, and it'll be finished at the middle school and also the early childhood center. Both of those will be done by that time frame. And then the last one is the asphalt work. I'm sure you've noticed all of that going on at the elementary. They are supposed to do the milling, and then the asphalt will begin next week, with the project being complete, weather permitting, by August the 5th. And those 2 areas are the elementary and then the maintenance department parking lot over there. Those are the two areas. So everything's progressing and moving along. Again, kudos to Mr. Stegeman because he stays on top of that, and then he reports to me every day about the progress on those things. So.
Couple of questions real quick.
Sure.
The maintenance building, there's that one raised area where the dumpster always sat. Are they taking that out, or is that island gonna remain?
I think it remains for now, but that is something that Mr. Stegeman has talked to me about how to revamp that, and then I talked to Mr. Earnhardt about some ideas of how to fix that. So I think it's definitely something we're gonna revisit, but for right now, I think it
I'm
remains.
just curious.
Yes.
That's why I was gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah.
I was wondering, because if it was something that we were gonna would now be the
Yeah.
time to
Let's
remove
do
it,
right?
just so you didn't have to, since you're getting all new asphalt everywhere else.
Right, yeah.
But, and then the other thing I know we discussed in the past, I don't know if you mentioned it, but you were looking at doing a facilities list as far as where everything is,
Yep, so.
age of different things, how's that coming?
It is,
or-
it's, Mr. Sigmund and I have talked now that we've been on all of the tours, he actually sent me all of the drawings of all of the buildings, and now we're putting it together in organization. And so we're starting with the elementary, and he has, I don't know if you've ever been in there, but he actually purchased, I'm sure it has a name, but they're just huge file cabinets that have all of the plans for each of the buildings. So before, literally, they were piled on a table, and you'd have to dig through those. And so he has these huge file, and now they're by building. So now the third grade wing, it's, all of those plans are in there in that way. So we've started it. It's going to be a process. It'll probably take us the entire
yeah.
year to get through it. Also, Ms. Stanley has taken all of the documents for each of those projects, where Dr. Luttrell was so good about remembering that. I wasn't a part of those conversations, so Ms. Stanley took all of that for me, and she's organized that in projects. So we're working towards it, but it's probably going to take us the bigger part of the year to get it done.
Understandable, sir.
Yes.
What they're going through, like the age of all the different roofs and when this project done, and putting them in a timeline. So it'll help for future planning. Okay, this roof is approaching
Yeah.
20 years old, we're gonna have to start looking at replacing it. So they're
Proactive.
developing a whole kind of an future look at what we're gonna need to be doing, so.
Just a quick question along, you mentioned something that interests me with the plans.
Mhm.
Do we have those digital also, or are they only the paper copies?
As far as I think there's a little bit of both. I know we have all the paper copies. I don't know how many of those are actual digital. I don't know. The ones he sent me, we have digital copies of the current plans
Mhm.
of all the buildings. Those are digital and hard copy, but the historic plans, I'm not sure how much.
Might not be a bad idea to consider just kind of getting them scanned, because I have been on projects before where maintenance area got some water damage, and they've lost all of their old stuff that
Yeah.
would have saved money on future projects if they had that opportunity.
And again, he may have more than what I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I can ask him and
Yeah, just
move
to-
towards
just
that.
to-
Yeah,
Because you hope
Better
nothing
safe
ever
than sorry.
happens,
Yeah.
but if it does,
It does.
it'd be nice to have those documents.
yeah.
Anybody else have any questions about the facilities report? A lot of good things happening, thank you.
You're welcome.
If any other prior or new business? If not, I will entertain a motion with a roll call vote to enter into executive closed session with closed record and closed vote pursuant to RSMO 610.021, sections 313, 614, and 2.
So moved.
Second?
A motion and a second. Ms. Stanley, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Fendler?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Wendell?
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd?
Yeah.
Mayor Festus? Yes.
Wonderful. Let's take 5 minutes and then we'll reconvene.
So you would have loved what I did